Mortal Kombat is one of the few franchises in gaming that has multiple adaptations to various other media. From live-action films, animated series, comic runs, television, collectible card games, and even a stage show, the world of Mortal Kombat is vast and, to be quite honest, not all that successful. To be fair though, that is a common trend among gaming franchises. They are notoriously challenging to adapt to other media. What sets MK apart, however, is how many attempts and how it's learned from each one. In today's video, we want to look at just a tiny sample of the evolution of media adaptations for the Mortal Kombat franchise, and give you a greater perspective on how the world envisioned by Ed Boon and the people at the now-defunct Midway Studios in Chicago have grown and changed over the years, adapting to both outside forces that change the landscape of films and animations, as well as forces from within, such as the phoenix-like rise of Netherrealm Studios. We will walk you through the details of the Mortal Kombat movies as well as the animated series, but of course, one of the biggest mediums that Mortal Kombat has been adapted to that has seen some outstanding commercial and critical success is the comic books. We don't want to spoil the comics in this video, but if you want to learn the stories of the ninjas, which are very much interlinked with the stories shown in the comics, we have a mini-series exploring those. Before we do, why not go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel? We produce in-depth guides with the help of the best fighting game players in their respective titles, as well as any number of explainers and recaps of the multitude of fighting games out there. Make sure to ring the bell as well so you're always notified when a new video goes live. Mortal Kombat movies. After the success of the original Mortal Kombat, Lawrence Kasanoff, a known Hollywood producer, came to Midway's offices while they were in the process of playtesting its sequel. During the tour, he expressed interest in adapting the arcade fighter to the big screen. Midway's Neil D. Nicastro disagreed, however. His apprehension was not unfounded either. Previous attempts at adapting video games into movies had been very rocky. The Super Mario Bros. Movie in '93 and the pair of fighting game adaptations in Double Dragon and Street Fighter in '94, only the latter of which would finally be able to claim some commercial success at the cost of terrible overall reviews at the time. Nevertheless, Kasanoff was determined to make it work, and after many rounds of negotiations, he secured the rights for an MK movie and brought in Paul W.S. Anderson to direct the film. In the years after the Mortal Kombat movie, Anderson would go on to direct multiple Resident Evil movies, many other gaming adaptations, and cult classics like Alien vs. Predator, Death Race, and Event Horizon. If any of those sound familiar to you, then you also probably know that they weren't well received by critics or even box office successes, but in 1994, when production started for the Mortal Kombat movie, no one could have known that. The production was set to start in August of 1994, and it is important to remember what our base foundation for this project is. We have a video game studio head that's more interested in developing their sequel than in doing any sort of film adaptation. We have a producer with minimal experience in adapting games to the big screen, and a hired director that is coming out fresh from his first feature film and who will go on to create some not very good movies in the future. The cast was then made up of 14 actors. Cameron Diaz was supposed to play Sonya Blade, but after many switches between the cast, it ended up going to Bridget Wilson. The rest of the cast included names like Christopher Lambert, Robin Shou, among others. Goro was the most expensive member of the cast and would be the creation of award-winning visual effects supervisor Tom Woodruff Jr., who a few years prior in 1992 won an award for visual effects in Death Becomes Her, along with a second nomination for his work in Alien 3. The film's production was separated into two locations, the first being California and the second being Thailand. Although the Los Angeles location filming would go fine by most standards, Thailand would prove the biggest hurdle for the production team. Things like proper sanitation and transport between the mainland and the islands used for filming were very crude and prone to issues. Although some of the actors had martial arts experience, many others did not, and in fact only had a couple of weeks to get the training they needed for the action sequences that would make it into the film. Speaking of which, there were a lot of injuries in this film. Thankfully, none of them were life-threatening, but most stunt doubles as well as the few actors who did their own action scenes all ended up getting pretty hurt. Some of these injuries included things like dislocated shoulders and fractured ribs. A large chunk of the movie dialogue was ad-libbed by the actors as encouraged by director Anderson, which led to many cutscenes and many reshoots, clawing away at the actors' patience. That is to say nothing of the content made after the fact, such as Reptile's fight scene, which was only added in response to the first few screenings. One of the good aspects of the film, or at least one that helped it when it came time to do well at the box office, was the simplicity of its plot. The Mortal Kombat tournament is a once-in-a-century competition between Earthrealm and Outworld's best fighters. If Earthrealm were successful, they would get to keep their freedom. If Outworld succeeded, then Earthrealm would be conquered. This good versus evil storyline plays out well in the film, with Raiden and the Earthrealm forces taking on the challenge of having to play by the rules while their opponents do not. It struck a chord with the cinema-going audience at the time and grossed over $100 million in revenue at the box office. Critics at the time, however, did find its campy and ad-lib dialogue uninspired, and most of all, they pointed out that trying to make a PG-13 film out of a gory and violent series made it lose part of the Mortal Kombat soul. Given that it wasn't an outright failure, Kasanoff's plan of making 3 films in the Mortal Kombat universe to coincide with the game releases went ahead and sold a sequel, and just like that, Mortal Kombat Annihilation was greenlit. For the sake of brevity, we'll just tell you that the sequel was bad. And not even good bad, it was just plain bad. At that point, it was pretty much decided that there wouldn't be a third Mortal Kombat movie. Well, that was until 2021 when we saw the release of a rebooted Mortal Kombat. Now, as we all know, between Mortal Kombat Annihilation and the 2021 reboot, a lot happened in the games. Midway went from a small studio to a bankrupted studio who got sold to Warner Brothers. There, they started a new development team called Netherrealm Studios, which exists today, and after numerous lawsuits, the rights for the Mortal Kombat film were again in the hands of Warner Brothers and NRS. With them, WB would get started on the next MK movie. Much of the 2021 film's production would take place in South Australia, with the cast sporting a legendary pool of talent, such as the famous Japanese actor and martial artist Hiroyuki Sanada as Scorpion, and Joe Taslim, who would take on the role of Sub-Zero. Overall, the 2021 Mortal Kombat film was fine. Given that it was released around the time of the pandemic, box office numbers were never gonna be that big. So instead, you have to look at the streaming statistics, and in this case, Mortal Kombat seems to be at a fairly okay commercial success. Or at least it was enough of a success that a sequel has been in the works. Let's just hope that this time around we don't get a redo of Annihilation, and that the production team takes to heart the criticisms of both the 2021 version as well as the original Mortal Kombat films. Mortal Kombat Animated Series. The other major media in the Mortal Kombat universe are animated films. Although there originally was a 1995 tie-in animated movie to coincide with the release of Mortal Kombat Annihilation, it wasn't well received and it wasn't particularly good either. Nevertheless, Warner Brothers tried again, this time in 2020 as they were getting ready to release the rebooted 2021 Mortal Kombat movie. It was decided that they would also produce an animated film, so they were around the story of Scorpion. The film's full title, Mortal Kombat Legends: Scorpion's Revenge. Directed by Ethan Spalding and produced by both Warner Brothers Animation as well as South Korean studio Mur. Scorpion's Revenge also had Ed Boon on board to help in the creative and story writing. Scorpion's Revenge is a retelling of Hanzo's origin story, all the way from his relationship with his brother Satoshi to the time that he's killed in the Mortal Kombat tournament to the hands of Sub-Zero to his resurrection in the Netherrealm thanks to Quan Chi's magic. The film was fairly well received, primarily because it showcased a lot more flexibility in his fighting scenes thanks to his animated style as opposed to the live-action movies that had come before. It was a breath of fresh air in the franchise, earning well over $2 million through its DVD and Blu-ray sales. A year later, in 2021, another Mortal Kombat Legends animated film would be released, this time called Battle of the Realms. Same director, same Mur Studios, same Ed Boon consulting on the story. The film serves as both a retelling of Liu Kang's origin and his destiny as a great fighter, as well as a sequel to Scorpion's Revenge, since a lot of the movie takes place in the aftermath of the first Mortal Kombat tournament. One in which, after Outworld's defeat, Shao Kahn would choose to ignore the result of the tournament and invade Earthrealm as retaliation. Although the movie was able to carry on from its predecessor, it also suffered from it. It simply was not as novel the second time around. One main criticism levied at the film was the fact that it had too many storylines playing out at the same time, leading to certain plots feeling underdeveloped as well as a confusing core narrative. But with that being said, it did manage to break the $1.5 million barrier from its US Blu-ray sales, and certainly continued giving hardcore fans of the Mortal Kombat universe more to chew on as development of Mortal Kombat 11 entered its twilight months in late 2021. Then a year later in 2022, we got the most recent addition to the growing series, Mortal Kombat Legends Snowblind. This time, however, Mer Studios will be replaced by Digital Imation, a different South Korean animation studio, with Rick Morales taking on the director's role. Once again acting as a sequel for Battle of the Realms, Snowblind focuses more heavily on Kenchi's story and the aftermath of the events in Mortal Kombat 11. This third installment of the animated movies managed to hit a chord with critics and fans alike. Kenchi had been a very underrepresented character for how much backstory and development he had in the comics and other media. A major breakthrough of the animated films was their rating, earning an R rating instead of PG-13. If you remember, when we talked about the live-action movies and how a major sticking point for the critics as well as the general audiences was the lack of real, true Mortal Kombat gore, well, with an R rating, those worries were gone, as they could be much more liberal with their fight scenes and language. Although the rating helped immensely when it came time to actually show core elements of the franchise, it also hindered its release, as there are very few places that will actually carry R-rated movies. But once again, the popularity of streaming as well as Warner Bros.' immense influence helped it break through most of those barriers. Into the future. In truth, the Mortal Kombat franchise has had its fair share of ventures across every media imaginable, and the future looks just as bright, with a movie sequel in the works and what is likely to be another animated direct-to-video movie given the positive reception of Snowblind. If you have only experienced the game stories, perhaps you should try these two. If nothing else, they're a great way to put your mind at ease until the next Mortal Kombat game is announced. My name is Chris, thank you for watching, and remember to let us know in the comments which piece of MK Media resonated the most with you. Until next time.